What happens when the guy you've been laughing at, sneering at, mocking behind his back, turns out to be the one signing your paychecks? Can you even imagine the gut punch that would be? This team at Belle Andrea's Fine Dining in Dallas found out in the most jaw-dropping, humbling way possible, and oh boy, did it hit them hard. It all started on one of those deceptively calm mornings, the kind where the world seems normal, even peaceful, with no hint of the storm brewing just around the corner. The sun was blazing bright over downtown Dallas, painting the city in golden hues, while the streets buzzed with the chaotic energy of folks rushing through their daily grind. Cars honked, heels clicked against the pavement, and amidst it all was Elijah, a delivery driver who'd seen more than most people could dream of in a lifetime. Elijah wasn't the type to strut around or demand attention. No, sir. He carried himself with this quiet, unshakable dignity that practically shouted strength without him ever raising his voice. And on this particular morning, fate had something big in store for him, an important delivery that would take him straight to the swanky doors of Belle Andrea's Fine Dining, the fanciest, most pretentious spot in the city, where the elite dined and the air dripped with high-end vibes. Now, let's be real, Belle Andrea's wasn't exactly Elijah's usual hangout. Can you picture him sipping champagne there? Not a chance. But today, duty called louder than ever, and his beat-up delivery truck rumbled right into the back alley where the magic or mayhem happened behind the scenes. Even the loading area screamed exclusivity, with those massive silver doors looming like sentinels, boldly marked staff only in sharp, no-nonsense letters. Did they think those doors could keep out the truth? Ha! Elijah didn't blink. He grabbed his invoice clipboard with a steady hand, slid on his worn work gloves because that's who he was, a man who got things done, and carefully stacked boxes of organic produce and specialty seafood onto his dolly. Fresh from the Gulf Coast, mind you. As he wheeled that load toward the entrance, a sound drifted out from inside, faint laughter, the kind that twists your stomach into knots. Ever hear a laugh that's more like a slap in the face? That's what this was, a cruel mix of ridicule and superiority that could make anyone's chest tighten. Elijah just shook his head, a tiny gesture of defiance. He'd been underestimated before judged, dismissed, you name it, but was he about to let it shake him? Not today. He knocked twice on that cold steel door, bam, bah, and stood there, waiting, cool as a cucumber. When it swung open, a young guy in a crisp white chef's jacket glared at him like Elijah was a stray dog wandering where he didn't belong. Behind him, two other staff members peeked out, one barely holding back a chuckle, the other rolling her eyes so hard you'd think they'd pop out. Deliveries are supposed to come earlier, the chef snapped, his voice oozing with annoyance, like Elijah had personally ruined his day. Elijah didn't flinch. He held up the invoice with that calm, steady grip of his and said, "I'm right on schedule, sir. Fresh seafood from Gulf Coast imports and the organic greens you requested." Did that shut the guy up? Nope. The chef just waved him off like he was swatting a fly. Whatever. Just bring it in and don't block the kitchen entrance. Oh, the nerve. So, Elijah pushed his dolly inside, and what did he see? Eyes, dozens of them, turning to gawk at him. The staff's faces twisted with expressions ranging from amused smirks to downright condescending sneers. Someone muttered under their breath, "Can you believe this? Guess the company sends just anyone to places like this." It wasn't just the words that stung. It was that tone, that mocking, dismissive drip of arrogance that cut deeper than any insult ever could. Elijah kept moving, unloading those boxes with care, his hands steady as a rock, even though their snide little jabs hung in the air like a rancid stench. Did he flinch? Did he snap? Not a chance. He had a secret up his sleeve, something they didn't know, and oh, how the tables were about to turn. As he rolled that dolly deeper into the restaurant, Elijah couldn't help but soak in the scene. Belle Andrea's Fine Dining was every bit as over the top as the rumors swore it was. Crystal chandeliers dangled from the ceiling like sparkling royalty, casting a warm golden glow over marble floors so polished you could fix your hair in their reflection. The open kitchen, a gleaming fortress of stainless steel, screaming money from every corner. But wait, was that all there was to it? Beneath the glitz, Elijah spotted something uglier, something rotten. The staff moved fast, sure, and they were efficient enough, but there was this air of self-importance clinging to them that made his skin crawl. These weren't folks proud of their craft, no way. They were proud of their pecking order, and right now, Elijah was the lowly delivery guy stuck at the very bottom. How wrong they were. Make sure you're not blocking the chef's station. A woman in a sharp black suit barked at him, her voice cutting through the air like a whip. She didn't even bother looking up from her precious clipboard as she strutted past. Yes, ma'am. Elijah shot back, polite but firm because that's who he was. A man with manners even when others had none. He didn't mind taking orders, but could he feel her eyes boring into him, judging him, searching for any excuse to write him off completely? You bet he could. Nearby, two waiters lingered at the edge of the dining area, folding napkins and whispering like school kids plotting a prank. Did they think he couldn't tell they were talking about him? Ha! Every few seconds they'd sneak a glance his way, their smirks barely hidden. What do you think, 5 minutes before he messes something up? One of them snickered. 5 minutes? Really? Elijah ignored them because why waste energy on petty nonsense, and kept unloading those boxes, stacking them neatly by the walk-in fridge. Years hauling deliveries had taught him one thing. People like this weren't worth a second thought. But the digs kept coming. You'd think someone delivering to a place like this would at least dress better, another voice piped up, dripping with sarcasm. Elijah glanced down at his uniform, clean, pressed, practical for a guy lugging boxes all day. Was it good enough for them? Heck no. But did he care? Not one bit. He wasn't there to win a fashion contest. When he finished the first load and turned to head back to his truck, he passed a group of line cooks near the grill. They stopped their chatter dead, staring at him like he'd crashed their private party. One of them, a tall guy with a smirk so smug it practically screamed trouble, leaned over and stage whispered, loud enough for Elijah to hear every word. Betcha he couldn't even afford to eat here, let alone step through the front door. The others burst out laughing, and Elijah felt his jaw tighten just a smidge. He'd let plenty roll off his back before years of it, but this was testing him. Still, he kept his cool and headed outside for the next load, his boots crunching against the gravel. But oh, the worst was still lurking around the corner, back inside. That mocking laughter grew louder, bolder, and Elijah could feel their eyes tracking him, like he was some circus act on display. He hauled the second set of boxes onto his dolly, the morning heat creeping in now, sweat beading on his brow and mixing with the alley dust. As he pushed back toward those kitchen doors, that faint laughter echoed out again. Did they even try to hide it? Not a bit. He stepped back into the kitchen, and there was the head chef, Damien, all sharp features and sharper attitude, inspecting the goods Elijah had already dropped off. Damien lifted a crate of seafood and wrinkled his nose like it was garbage. Is this the best they could send? He muttered, just loud enough to make sure Elijah caught it. Elijah paused. Should he let that slide? If there's an issue with the quality, I can call the supplier, and he started, but Damien cut him off with a wave so dismissive it could have knocked Elijah over. No, just drop it off and leave. We've got more important things to focus on. Elijah kept unloading, watching Damien strut around like he owned the place. The chef barked orders with this over-the-top authority, like he needed the whole room to bow down to him. I swear, Damien said, turning to a server with a dramatic sigh. The standards are dropping everywhere. Look at this guy. Do they not teach professionalism to delivery drivers anymore? The server, a young woman with a fake smile plastered on, glanced at Elijah but stayed quiet, nodding at Damien like a puppet before scurrying off to set up tables. Elijah kept his head down, finishing the job. Was he going to let their words worm under his skin? No way. But that irritation? It was simmering now, bubbling up from the blatant disrespect. The assumption he was nothing just because of his job. As he stacked the empty crates, a kitchen staffer hollered, "Hey, delivery guy, you missed a box." Elijah turned, confused had he really, and saw the guy pointing to a crate by the door. He walked over, bent down, and picked it up empty. Another wave of laughter crashed through the kitchen. "Just messing with you, man," the guy crowed, slapping his knee. "Relax a little." "Relax?" After that, Elijah didn't say a word. He set the crate down and finished up, his patience wearing thin as a threadbare shirt. But he held it together. Why? Because he had a job to do and a bombshell to drop, even if they didn't see it coming. When the delivery was done, Elijah handed the signed invoice to Damien. The chef didn't even glance at him, just scribbled his name like it was a chore. "You can go now," Damien said, sharp and cold, not a shred of gratitude. Elijah paused, locking eyes with him for a heartbeat. "Have a good day," he said, smooth as silk, before heading for the door. But then, a waiter muttered under his breath, "Yeah, go back to wherever you came from." And that was the straw that broke it. Elijah stopped dead, hand on the door handle. The room went silent, pin, dropped silent, every eye on him. He turned slowly, facing the waiter with a look so calm, so confident, it wiped every smirk clean off their faces. "I came here," he said, voice steady as steel, "to deliver something you clearly need more of. Respect." The silence held as he walked out, leaving them stunned. And oh, what a twist was still waiting to drop. Oh, the real surprise was still hiding in the shadows, just waiting to drop like a bombshell. Can you imagine how shocked they'd be when they finally figured out who Elijah really was? There he stood, leaning against the side of his weathered delivery truck, the engine still ticking from the morning's work, catching his breath under the blazing Dallas sun. The delivery was done, check that off the list. But man, the weight of that morning clung to him like a second skin. He'd been in tight spots like this 100 times before, brushed off, underestimated, dismissed like yesterday's news. But today felt different. Maybe it was how smug they all were, how cozy they'd gotten in their little bubble of assumptions, so totally blind to the fact that Elijah was way more than the dusty uniform they sneered at. He tilted his head and glanced up at the restaurant's grand facade Bellandrias, etched in fancy gold letters above the entrance, shimmering like some kind of royal crown. Surreal didn't even begin to cover it. Just a few weeks ago, can you believe it? He'd signed the final papers that made him the owner of this glitzy joint. A huge leap forward in his growing empire of fine dining spots across the city. Elijah's road to this moment wasn't paved with silver spoons or easy handouts, no way. It was forged through years of sweat, dripping down his back, sacrifices that cut deep, and a fire in his gut to prove himself against all odds. Picture this, a small town in Louisiana, so tiny you'd miss it if you blinked, where opportunities were as rare as a cool breeze in July and expectations for a kid like him were even scarcer. His parents? Absolute warriors. They worked their fingers to the bone, day in and day out, pouring every ounce of grit they had into teaching him the value of hard work and keeping your word. Elijah was only 16 when he started scrubbing greasy plates as a dishwasher in a little roadside diner, the kind with flickering neon signs and coffee that tasted like tar. Back then, he'd watch the cooks flipping burgers and the servers balancing trays, his eyes wide with wonder. Could he ever make something bigger, something extraordinary? Oh, he dreamed of it every night. And climb he did. Over the years, he hauled himself up that ladder kitchen staff, manager, you name it, until he'd scraped together enough cash to open his first restaurant. Was it fancy? Heck no! But it was his. Built from the ground up with his own two hands, and from that humble little spot, His vision exploded into something unstoppable. So when the chance to snag Bellandria's popped up, did Elijah hesitate? Not for a second. Sure, it was a gamble, a big, scary risk, but he could see it, the potential shimmering just beneath that glossy surface. This wasn't just about exclusivity for the rich and snooty. He wanted to transform it into something incredible, a place where every single soul walking through those doors felt valued. From the high-rolling guests to the staff hustling in the back to the delivery folks like him, lugging in the goods that kept the whole show running. But here's the kicker, that transition, it wasn't going to be a cakewalk. Elijah could have strutted in, flashing his new title like a shiny badge. But no, he chose the sneaky route. Why announce he was the boss right off the bat? He wanted to slip in undercover, to see the real deal, to watch how the staff acted when they thought no one important was looking. And what he saw that morning? Oh, it confirmed every suspicion he'd had. Change was overdue, and not just a little, but a whole darn overhaul. He climbed back into his truck, the vinyl seat creaking under him, and tapped out a few notes on his tablet, his mind racing as he prepped for the big staff meeting he'd set for later that afternoon. He'd kept it hush-hush, all mysterious, like just telling the manager, round everyone up in the dining room at 3:00 p.m. No questions. Oh, they had no idea what was coming. His thoughts drifted to Damien, that sharp-tongued chef with his nose so high in the air. You'd think he could smell the clouds. How quick was that guy to judge, to toss out a snarky dismissal like it was nothing? Then there were the waiters, snickering behind their napkins, the kitchen crew with their smirks, and the manager who barely gave him a nod. Was Elijah mad? Nope, not even close. What he felt was heavier, deeper, a pang of disappointment that twisted in his chest. How could people slip so easily into those ugly ruts of prejudice and disrespect? By the time he pulled away from the restaurant, tires crunching over the pavement, he'd made up his mind. This meeting wasn't just going to be a how ya doing moment. Oh no. It was going to set the tone loud and clear for what Bellandria's would stand for from here on out. Respect, humility, equality, those weren't just pretty words to toss around. They were the bedrock of everything Elijah held dear. And in just a few hours, they were about to find out exactly who he was and why he'd shown up. The clock hit 3:00 p.m. Bam! And the staff trickled into the main dining room of Bellandria's fine dining, a mix of curiosity and grumbling in the air. Some were nosy, craning their necks to see what was up. Others were downright annoyed, tapping their feet like they had better places to be. Damien? He lounged against a table, arms crossed tight, his face a storm cloud of irritation and boredom. "What's this about?" he muttered to a server nearby, his voice dripping with disdain. "We're slammed tonight. Slammed. And now we've got to sit through some pointless meeting?" Over by the entrance, the manager, Greg, a middle-aged guy with a permanent frown, shifted nervously, his eyes darting around like he was waiting for a ghost to pop out. He'd been told to herd everyone in, but did he know why? Not a clue. All he got was a cryptic order. The new owner was coming today, and this meeting was non-negotiable. Oh, the tension was thick enough to cut with a butter knife. Then the doors swung open, dramatic as all get out, and in strolled Elijah, still rocking that same delivery uniform, dusty boots and all. For a split second, the room went dead silent, every jaw practically hitting the floor as they swapped confused glances. Damien let out a short, barking laugh, shaking his head like it was the funniest joke he'd ever heard. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered under his breath, loud enough for half the room to catch it. Elijah didn't flinch. He marched right to the center, calm as a summer breeze, feeling the weight of their stares and all those unspoken questions buzzing like flies. Did he dive right in? Nope. He let that silence stretch, locking eyes with them one by one, letting them stew in it. Finally, Greg cleared his throat, awkward much, and piped up, Elijah, what are you doing here? This meeting's for staff only. Elijah flashed a faint smile, his voice steady but firm as iron. I know, Greg. That's why I'm here. Damien rolled his eyes so hard they nearly spun out of his head. Look, if this is about that delivery earlier, can we just move on? We've got actual work to do. Elijah turned to him, gaze unwavering. You're right, Chef Damien. This is about the delivery, and it's about a whole lot more than that. Oh, you could feel the air shift. Damien raised an eyebrow, but before he could fire back, Elijah dropped the hammer. Let me introduce myself properly. My name is Elijah Reynolds, and as of 3 weeks ago, I'm the new owner of Belle Andrea's Fine Dining. Boom. The room went quiet again, but this time it was a stunned, suffocating silence. Damien's smirk, gone wiped clean off his face, replaced by wide-eyed disbelief. The servers swapped, looks like they'd just seen a UFO. And Greg? His face went pale as a sheet. You, Damien croaked, voice barely a whisper. You're the owner? That's right, Elijah said, cool and even. And before you say another word, listen up. This isn't about me waving my title around or putting anyone in their place. This is about respect. He paused, letting that sink in deep. I spent this morning watching how you all run this show. I saw how you treated me, thinking I was just some delivery driver, and I want you to really think about what that says. Not about me, but about you. Damien opened his mouth, then snapped it shut, words failing him. The servers stared at their shoes, suddenly obsessed with the laces. Elijah pressed on, his voice ringing with quiet power. You judged me before you even knew my name. You sized me up based on my clothes, my job, and you ran with it. That kind of attitude, it doesn't just sting me, it drags this restaurant down, poisons the culture we're trying to build. The silence held, his words echoing off the walls. He scanned the room, meeting their eyes again. Every single person who steps through these doors deserves respect, guest, staff, or the guy hauling in the goods that keep this place alive. That's the bar I'm setting for every one of you. And for the first time that day, he saw its shame creeping into their faces. Was it comfy for them? Nope. But oh, it was exactly what they needed to feel. That silence? You could have heard a pin drop. Every staff member wrestled with the weight of Elijah's words. Damien shifted, uneasy now, his arms dangling awkwardly instead of crossed in defiance. The servers dodged eye contact, their smirks long gone. Elijah stepped forward, softening his tone but keeping that steel backbone. I get it. Change doesn't flip on like a light switch. But if this restaurant's going to thrive, it starts with how we treat each other right here, right now, with accountability and respect for every soul in the room. He paused, making sure it hit home. I didn't waltz in at the top, you know. I've been where you are, long hours, jobs nobody notices. I've scrubbed floors until my hands bled, washed dishes until my fingers pruned, hauled boxes just like this morning. And let me tell you, those gigs, they're as vital as any chef or manager here. Without them, this place is toast. They stayed quiet, his story slamming into them harder than any lecture ever could. Elijah let it settle, then kept going. So here's the deal starting today. We're building a new vibe here. One where every role gets respect, where snap judgments and snobbery have no place. And if anyone thinks they can't roll with that, well, this ain't your team. Quiet nods rippled through, some muttering sorries under their breath. Damien finally spoke, voice shaky. I didn't mean to be disrespectful. Elijah cut him off with a raised hand. Actions speak louder than words, chef. Want to do better? Prove it, show me, and this crew you're here to step up. That's for all of you. He eased back, calm washing over him again. We've all got biases. We all mess up, but what counts is how we push forward. And I know this team can be better. With that, he turned to leave, but not before dropping one last gem. Remember this, respect costs nothing, but losing it, that'll cost you everything. They sat there, stunned, long after he walked out, his words pressing down like a thunderclap. And for the first time in years, Belle Andrea's fine dining felt like it might actually live up to its name. This isn't just a restaurant tale, it's about us, all of us. How often do we slap labels on folks without a clue about their story? How many times do we let pride or prejudice fog up our view? Let's do better seriously. In our jobs, our neighborhoods, our everyday chats, respect and kindness, they don't just shift lives, they build bridges. Oh, what a story Elijah's tale spins. It hits me right in the gut. I can't help but feel a fiery mix of admiration and frustration when I think about lifestyle and social views through this lens. How often do we strut around, puffed up with our own importance, judging people by their clothes, their jobs, their so-called place in the world? It's maddening. Society's obsession with status, fancy titles, flashy cars, designer labels drives me up the wall because it blinds us to the raw, beautiful truth. Every person's got a story, a struggle, a spark that deserves respect. Elijah didn't just climb from dishwasher to owner. He carried dignity in his bones every grueling step of the way. That's the kind of life I believe in, a grind fueled by heart, not handouts, where worth isn't tied to what you wear, but what you do. And the social rot he exposed, it's everywhere. People sneer at lowly jobs, delivery drivers, janitors, cashiers like they're beneath us. But who keeps the world spinning? They do. I'm sick of this hierarchy nonsense that poisons us, making us forget that respect isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Elijah's stand at Belle Andrea's wasn't just a mic drop, it was a wake-up call. Why can't we see past the surface? Why do we let prejudice fester when kindness could heal so much? I say we ditch the shallow judgments and live louder, honor the hustle, lift each other up, and build a world where no one's invisible. Elijah's got it right. Respect costs nothing, but its absence costs us everything. Let's wake up and live like it.